When we were kids, one of our first looks into the world of birds came in the form of a small field guide titled Birds of Wisconsin. This small blue book would serve as a starting point for a passion that would one day blossom into a life-changing hobby. While we were growing and learning, the author of this field guide was hard at work creating more guides for not just birds, but almost every type of creature in North America. We got the chance to talk with the man behind the field guides, Stan Tekiela, about the making of his books, as well as his career as a naturalist.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us. Derek and Ryan from Badgerland Birding here, and we are joined by author, naturalist, and I believe he does a bit of guide work as well. Stan Tekiela, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Ryan, I think you got the Birds of Wisconsin, Stan Tekiela, with you. This is one of the first guides that we ever used. So it was really cool to page through the birds in that book and then like later on find one and be like, I remember the American coot. I saw that in the book. So it's really cool to actually meet you and be able to talk with you.
Excellent. Well, thanks for having me. So as you mentioned, I'm an author, and I've done a lot of field guides over the years. And for Wisconsin in particular, I've done the Birds of Wisconsin, Mammals of Wisconsin, Trees Wisconsin, Wildflowers, and Reptiles and Amphibians. So lots of different field guides for Wisconsin. You know, I'm just next door in Minnesota, so
yeah.
That's why.
I was gonna say, it sounds like what you're saying is you know Wisconsin extremely well, because you're like, let's just not stop at birds, let's do it all.
Yeah.
Might as well.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, being a naturalist, which is what I am, that's my profession. It's, you know, it's kind of what I've spent my life doing. A naturalist is kind of a generalist in all topics of nature. It's not, you know, zoomed in on one narrow topic. So, and that's what I really like about it. I like with nature, it's the whole thing. It's the big picture of things. It could include, you know, the weather and the bugs and you know, the rocks and you name it, all of it. That's what I enjoy about it, is that great big diversity out there.
Yeah, it's definitely more like a real full ecology sense, like, you know, everything working together, food web kind of perspective. One of the questions we had was, how did you get into making field guides? Like, was there a moment where you're like, I want to make a field guide? Or how did you get into that?
Well, it's interesting. So when I was young, for some crazy reason, I felt like I wanted to write nature books, in particular field guides. I was for some reason convinced, even at the ages of like 10 and 12 years old, I was convinced I could write a book about the nature in your own backyard that was there that you weren't seeing. And so, I mean, it goes so far back, I don't remember a time when I didn't, you know, want to do that. And so even when I hit my mid-teens, I was taking pictures with a film camera and taking a 3-ring binder and literally just handwriting in the text and then taking pictures and gluing them into the book, you know, and I kept doing this to write my own, you know, field guide basically of the things that you could find in your own backyard. And then I kind of kept doing that for quite a long time. And then about, well, I guess about 35 or so years ago, I had an opportunity to write a book. So there was a brand new publishing company just starting up called Adventure Publications. They were in Cambridge, Minnesota. And I contacted them and had a meeting with them. Now you got to put this in the context. This was pre-computer, so I wrote my first 3 or 4 books on a typewriter. So
wow.
I literally had
That's
a manuscript,
crazy.
paper manuscript of the whole thing that I had bound up, and I put together this book, and it was on wild edible plants, and met with this publisher and talked to them about it, and they said, yeah, we'd like this idea. And I said, well, great, send over a contract. And they said, how soon do you think you could get this done? And I just reached down underneath the table, and because I had it with me, and I pulled it out and plopped it on the table. So here it is. And, you know, so, and that's kind of started the whole thing. You know, it was like, it was like, I got to realize my lifelong dream of being able to write this book. And then literally nobody said stop. So I just kept going. And then I think the second book, I can't recall right now, but I think the second book was on wild edible mushrooms. And then I did a third book on general nature things, kind of a naturalist book of all the different stuff. Meanwhile, this is all on a typewriter and on paper. And I think it was about the fourth or fifth book that computers were starting to come out. And my older brother was like, man, you got to get this, you know, this type of computer. And I was like, what is it? You know? And so I got it. And it was like a laptop type of, you know, computer, except, you know, really thick, you know. And I bought it and I brought it home. And I remember very vividly opening it up, turning it on, and it, you know, made all these noises and, you know, flashed all these things on the screen. And then it stopped. And in the top left corner, it said C:\\. And that was it. And I thought, what am I supposed to do with this? You know? So I called up my brother and I said, what do I do? And he goes, well, type this command in. And he told me some command and I typed it in and something happened. And I was like, how am I supposed to know what that command was? You know? And you know what I'm talking about? This is DOS. You know, this is
it's like way early.
This is before Windows.
To boot up. Sometimes doesn't even work to boot up.
Exactly. And so, you know, basically got to figure it out, used it as like a word processor, and then started, you know, kept writing books with it. And here we are about 35 years later and still going at it, still writing books and making it happen.
So what's the process of compiling a field guide? Like if you were to make a new field guide right now, like where do you start?
Species list, always with a species list. You got to come up with the species of what you're going to be writing about. And, you know, that's the first and foremost type of thing. Figure out who your audience is and then write for those audience. Figure out who those people are that you're trying to reach. And then I literally just sit down and start to write. Now, you know, originally it was all with references, you know, book references. I don't know if you guys can see this here. I'm going to try to move this here. I don't know if you can see, but I'm trying to, I can't move too far, but there's a big bookcase behind me, all full of books and things. Well, that quickly became obsolete with the internet. And, but it was one of those things where most everything I was writing from was just writing from my knowledge of what it is. I had to look up things like, you know, average eggs, or what color the eggs are, or how long the incubation period is. That type of stuff was always, you know, something I always had to double check. But all the things in like the Stan's notes or those types of things are all just kind of off the top of my head.
Out of all the ones you've done, which field guide was the most interesting to you?
Oh, wow. How about this? What was the most fun field guide to do in general was, I think, the mammals of Texas. Mammals of Texas, me and my good friend Rick Bowers spent quite a bit of time in Texas, and we had to go around and find every single one of those animals that, you know, because for my mammal books, they're comprehensive. They cover all the mammals found in the state, and we had to find every mouse, every vole, every shrew, you know, every kangaroo rat. And we traveled that whole state, going everywhere. And then we would live trap animals and photograph them. And we just had so much fun. I can remember being on South Padre Island, and we were looking for a specific type of kangaroo rat, and it came in 2 or 3 different colors. And so we scoped out an area, trying to figure out what we wanted to do. You know, how are we going to set our traps for the night? And it's very important to do this. I'm a trained biologist, so that's my degree. So trapping small mammals was something very familiar to me and to my buddy Rick. And we kind of looked all over the place, and we figured out, okay, well, we'll start to trap here. And, we had this whole game plan going, right? Then started getting dark, and also we noticed these kangaroo rats were coming out of their burrows, and we could actually see them and see which colors they were. And I remember turning to Rick and saying, "Hey, do we have that butterfly net in the car?" And he's like, "Yeah." So I took the butterfly net and ran up on the sand dunes and found one of these guys and netted it and said, "There we go, all done." And I was running all over the sand dunes, chasing down these kangaroo rats and catching them and finding the right colors and releasing the other ones, and then set up some things, photographed them, and put them right back where they were. And it was just such a fun time. You get such a intimate knowledge and personal experience with these small mammals like that. It was absolutely fun. But then also had to get out and find all the other big animals too. So that was really a fun time. I'll probably say now, so over the years, I've done a little over 200 books over the last 35 years or so. And one of the best times I had, I know you guys want to talk about those field guides, but one of the best times I had was doing a book on bears. Did a book on brown, polar, and black bears. And it took about 3 years traveling all over the place to photograph all the bears needed for that. And I was literally climbing in bear dens, photographing these, moms and cubs in dens and things like that. And when that time was over, when I was finished with that book, I was actually a little kind of sad because I knew I'd probably never have as much fun as I just had as those 3 years, going to the Arctic for polar bears and, traveling all over for brown bears all through Alaska. It was just spectacular. It was just so much fun. It really was.
That sounds like some real Indiana Jones stuff, going into bear dens and things.
Yeah, I actually have so many more questions now, because I always thought that with field guides, it was kind of like, well, you do your research, sit in your house and you make, you compile stuff. But it sounds like you really experienced a lot of the stuff that you actually put in.
Oh yeah, no, I'm a trained biologist. I went to the University of Minnesota. I have a degree in wildlife biology. And and I take all the photos, or not absolutely every single one, but most of the photos in my books are my pictures. And so it's all comes from personal firsthand knowledge. That's really what it kind of boils down to. So
I'm picturing some stuff in those field guides, like this particular kangaroo rat was the softest of the 3 colors. Yeah. You're like, "Stan, how did you know that?" You're like, "I don't know."
I can tell you, when I was doing the mammals of Arizona, we set up on the Audubon Society's big ranch. They have this massive ranch down right on the Mexican border, and we were trapping all the different small mammals there. I've been bit by more small mammals than I care to count. I mean, it's just crazy. I remember one time telling my doctor, I said, "I should probably get a rabies vaccination." He's like, "Yeah, you think?" So I, of course, early on got rabies vaccination, all that, because I was dealing with bats, dealing with small mammals and things like that. And, just being out in the field and working with these things, absolutely wonderful.
How do you decide which species of plants and animals make the cut in each field guide? Like, how did you decide which specific birds to put in the Wisconsin one, or like the mammal one? Like,
yeah.
What goes into that?
So mammals, it would be a comprehensive, because there's in most states they have about 80 to 120 or so mammals in the state. A lot of them have less than that. A lot of them are in 70 or 80 number of mammals. So to do a comprehensive book is pretty, easy to do that way. Wildflowers, on the other hand, any given state is going to have 3,000 different wildflowers. So I'll pick 200 of the largest, most obvious, the most common, the ones that you see. And it's 200, by the way, because that's basically the thickness of the binding. That's the largest the binding could go. And so I'll do that. Same thing with the birds. I'll look at what's the largest, most obvious, the most common, the most seen, the most encountered species, and then the iconic ones, like peregrine falcon, because it's an iconic. Everybody seems to think that they see a peregrine falcon in their yard all the time. And so those are the things that I put those in there too. And so, and those could range anywhere from, those books range anywhere from 130 to 170 species per book. In there, where most states are going to have about 400 species in their state. I'm covering about 130 to 170 of them, depending on the state, which state it is.
Yeah, because it's kind of like some migrate through, some barely show up. There's a couple individuals of these to show up.
Yeah.
But I do have to say that book that I'll hold it up again, the Birds of Wisconsin one, was really like the springboard field guide for us.
Yeah.
Because we used to page through it, and at the time, like, we were very inexperienced. We were just like little kids and not even birders at all. We would be like, oh man, a horned lark. Like, look at that thing. Wouldn't it be cool to see that? I remember the one was always the coot, because we never, in the city would see coots. It was like, wow, if only we could see a coot. And that was kind of like, we always reference it in other stuff, or like that Stan Tekiela Birds of Wisconsin book.
It's true, we do.
That's fun.
Our grandpa had a yard list too that we would go over and we'd be like, we saw the nuthatch today, we saw the robin today. So
that's so awesome.
I
got to tell you.
Oh, go ahead, Stan.
I was going to say, I got to tell you, when I started doing this, a long time ago, I didn't fully think through the gravity, the reach, the touch, the reaching out and touching people with these books. It didn't occur to me. And hearing these stories from you guys, I hear it from a lot of different people. And I shake my head and go, wow, that is so amazing. It really warms my heart. And I think that is, to be able to positively, influence people in a way that helps them to appreciate nature is what I've spent my whole career doing. And it's like, wow, I did it.
Yeah, it's come a long way since the typewriter, huh?
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah,
still in this one, the little check boxes that
the
checklist as well. So yeah, we definitely got a lot of use out of this one.
Yeah. One of our viewers wanted to know if you were working on any upcoming projects right now.
Yeah, I'm redoing a bunch of different books right now, and I'm doing a bunch of new books. I don't know. Hang on 1 second. This is video, right? So I can show you.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple of new things that this is the first one that came out. It's Pacific Northwest Birding Companion. It's a very large formatted book like this. And so I followed that up with the Midwest Birding Companion.
Nice.
And so that, of course, covers the Wisconsin, Minnesota, the whole kind of the Midwest area there, the Dakotas and such. And it's a nice large, you can see compared to the size of my hand, it's a big, large formatted book. Actually has places in which to do notes on the bottom. It's got all that text that you're familiar with in my types of books. So, and photos in there. And then I'm doing a lot of other books, like I did another book on loons. Then I have another one on wolves, coyotes, and foxes coming out. And a lot of these kids guides. All right, hang on a second here. Let me see if I can leave my headphones on this time. So here's like the, I happen to grab Minnesota. So it's a kid's guide to the birds of Minnesota. And here's the kid's guide to the birds of Michigan. And I just finished up the Carolinas. These are all new titles.
Awesome.
Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, a bunch of, ones like that. So.
Nice. That's really exciting that there's, a kids version too.
Well, yeah, it's basically kind of kidified, and text is larger, and which is kind of funny because I have, when I'm out giving talks and things like that, I'll be, some group or organization, and then afterwards I'll have some books for sale, and they'll, people come up to me, who are, let's just say, older than me, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna get this book, and I'll go, you realize that's a children's book, right? And they're like, yeah, but I can read it.
Yeah, it's got pictures in, the words are big. I like
and
it.
The text is bigger, so I can actually see it. And I was like, oh, okay. So you're making my wheels spin, and like,
it's one of those things where it's like ages 0 to like 8, and then like 81 to 90.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Yeah. So I got a lot of those books. Frankly, I got up this morning and opened up my email, and there was 7 contracts from my publisher saying, please sign these contracts for these new books. And I remember thinking, they didn't even talk to me about them. I was just like,
you're like, I'm gonna make them, but still
I'm gonna do it, but you're taking me for granted. And it's like, okay, so sign the books and let's get the things going. So it's really what I've ever wanted to do. And it's truly, I love doing it. I love the whole process. I love everything that kind of goes along with it too. I just really enjoy it. And if I didn't, I wouldn't do it. That's for sure. I really do.
That's awesome to be able to do something you're so passionate about. I think that's like the dream for everybody, really.
Yeah, we have a lot of young viewers who I'm sure would love to have, a job like you have or something in the sciences. Do you have any advice for young birders or young naturalists?
Well, you got to keep going. That's the bottom line. The other day, it's not easy, by the way. The other day I sat down and counted up, it was tax season. Okay. So we're just doing our taxes and counted up the revenue streams, the different ways I make a living. And I'm not kidding with you when I say I do 9 different things to make one living. So 9 different things kind of all piled together, all cobbled together. Now, all those 9 things are very similar. They're all interwoven together. So, it's very difficult to tell the differences between them, but there's 9 different ways in which I have to, hustle to make that living. And so it's not easy. And I think a lot of people think, oh, you get one job and then, you work. Well, you could, you can do that. You can get one job and work in that one job your whole life. But if you want to try to do something like I'm doing, you really have to kind of find a bunch of different avenues in which to, make that living. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you made about people thinking it's like, oh, you work with animals. That's like, that must be like super easy. It's like, well, I'm also doing these other 8 things working with animals and it's a lot of work, but it is fun.
And my publisher just made me do 100 new field guides about it.
Exactly.
I actually wanted to touch a little bit on the photography aspect too, because I know that you do a lot of stuff with bird photography and animal photography in general.
Don't look.
I want to know what your favorite photos that you've ever taken are, one of a bird specifically, and then just your favorite in general.
So that's a common question that I get. I oftentimes will say my favorite, subject or bird is literally the one I'm doing. So last weekend, I was in Wyoming photographing sage grouse. So love it. Fabulous bird, spectacular bird. I was out on the 200,000 acre private ranch with these sage grouse, and it was spectacular. And so, for now, that's my favorite, but this week I'm going to be going up and setting up blinds to photograph ruffed grouse, because I got ruffed grouse just north of me a little bit. And when I photograph them, they're going to be my favorite. So it's really, I enjoy all of it. I really do. I enjoy all the animals, all the insects, all the reptiles, the amphibians, the whole thing. I just enjoy it. I really do.
Is there one picture that you have taken though, that looking back on it, you're like, that one just like because of the moment or because of the journey or just because of the aesthetic that really stands out to you?
That's an interesting question, because pictures that I think are like, that's it, baby, that's the shot, editors don't like them, or the publisher will say, no, I'm like, but you don't get it. This is a perfect shot, and you don't know what I went through to get that, and that's the point.
This is a selfie with a tan kangaroo rat that I caught by hand. You don't appreciate
exactly. And they just don't get it. So therefore it doesn't, it never works out. So I have temporary, favorites, but it always changes and things like that. I do have some photos up on the wall, but honestly, you can see them back there. To me, in my mind, those pictures are so old that they're not interesting anymore. I like the new stuff that I'm doing, and I like that, and I like the technology. That sounds kind of a little bit strange for a naturalist, but I love the technology. I'm, as far as like right now, so obviously I started in film days, shooting slide film, and there was rumblings of this digital photography on the horizons, and I read all about it, really got into it, and I ran to digital. The moment digital came out, I was like, bye film, I'm out of here. And I ran to digital. I thought to myself, this is it. This is the future. This is how it's going to be. And really went for it. Now, and that was in 1999, 2000. And when we switched over basically from film to digital. And now here we are in 2022. And guess what? Another watershed change. We're switching from DSLR, these digital single lens reflex cameras, to the mirrorless. And it is a huge difference. It's not an incremental kind of change. It's not evolutionary change. This is revolutionary change, going to the mirrorless. And again, I ran to it and said, oh yeah, I want that, and fully integrated and changed over to the mirrorless cameras now.
Do you have any gear recommendations for gear you really love using?
Wow, the gear these days is amazing, truly amazing. There are the things you could do with this. When I think about, I was just talking to a buddy of mine who he and I, 40 years ago used to photograph hawks up on Hawk Ridge in Duluth with film cameras with manual focus, birds in flight, manual focus. Come on, I mean, were we insane? And because nowadays it's like the equipment is so darn good, and it really doesn't matter. Honestly, I shoot Canon. I've always shot Canon. I've shot Canon for 40 years, and Canon's fabulous. The Sony stuff is amazing. Nikon is finally caught up, and they're in the game now too. So it really doesn't matter. They're all really, really good. And this mirrorless technology is mind-blowing. Really, truly is.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like Ryan and I grew up in a time where like we didn't have smartphones. Like we didn't have a phone growing up, and then we had like the flip phone where you did like, the T9, whatever.
Yeah,
and now the kids who grew up now, they're just used to having a smartphone. I'm like, you don't know what it was like growing up. But for you, like with that evolution of camera equipment, you must be like, to everybody around now, like you have it so good with the amount of technology that you have and the access to.
Yeah. Oh, I joke and say with today's modern cameras, you can take them, drop them on the ground. The impact causes the shutter to go off, and whatever it's looking at, you got a perfect picture. I mean, it's like, it's truly remarkable what you can do. And the latitude of mistakes, you can make massive mistakes and still be able to correct it, as long as you're shooting raw and things like that. So it's wonderful. I love the technology. I think it has changed everything. Believe it or not, when I was doing the very first field guides, there were species of birds that nobody had pictures of. I mean, you just couldn't get it. With film and manual focus, you couldn't get it. And not enough people were doing it too. I remember a time when there was probably a dozen of us in the United States who concentrated on bird photography. And that was it. And I knew them all, And now, I mean, there's probably 1 million plus people who are out there concentrating on birds and things like that.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy to think about, because I remember Ryan and I would go to Retzer Nature Center and they would have these like printouts of birds that you could buy to like hang on your wall. And it was always like getting a new one, be like, oh, I have this picture. And that's like how you would think of that species, is by like that one picture you would get.
The one picture, right?
Yeah.
You know, by the way, we have about, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but we have about, it's either 13 or 16 species of chipmunks in the United States. And there's one species down in New Mexico, Arizona area that as of not that long ago, still nobody's got any good pictures of it. So one of these days, I'm going to get a wild hare and I'm going to be packing up my truck and I'm going to be going there and I'm going to get that chipmunk and I'm going to photograph it.
Well, funny
I feel
story.
like that could be
We're
a book
going
in itself,
there
the quest to photograph this chipmunk.
We're going to Arizona and New Mexico in a little bit, actually. So how do we identify that guy?
Let's get you some intel and where to look and what to look for and all that.
I'm be like, Stan told me to just drop my camera on the ground and it would take a picture of it for me.
And then you'll accidentally catch an ivory build.
Yeah, point it in the general direction of the animal, but yeah, go ahead and do that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we had just some kind of like fast questions that we wanted to ask.
And rapid just, fire, huh?
Yeah, first thing that comes to mind. Like,
sure.
So first one is, what's your favorite bird?
It's like asking you what's your favorite.
The grouse.
Child is, I can tell you this. One of my favorite, you just can't do it. You just can't, there's so many cool, if I had to say a group of birds, I would say it's the hummingbirds. Hummingbirds they're unlike all other birds, they're very unique.
I think we'll accept that.
Okay.
Favorite location to bird?
Alaska.
Oh, that's cool. Do you think the ivory-billed woodpecker still exists?
I wish. I really wish. How long ago was it when they kind of came out with their, we found it type of thing?
2004, I think, was the Fitzpatrick, Arkansas stuff.
Yeah, I did a lot of radio and TV interviews and things at the time saying, gosh, I hope they found it. I really hope they found it. With a lot of hindsight, I would say that there is probably not. They would have found it by now. I mean, when you talk about the number of people who are looking for it, and the teams of people out, and the technology that they've deployed, and I know there's a lot of people who still say, yeah, it's there, it's definitely, we saw glimpses of it and things like that. It's like, I don't know, with our technology these days, you just get the camera pointing that general direction, you're going to get a picture of it. So it's not like you're going to get an old grainy picture on film,
Yeah, Ryan and I were talking about how we feel like when we first started learning about it, we were pretty optimistic. But we've asked people like, yeah, if you have a photo, like send it our way. And there's a bunch of people like, I have these in my yard, and they send you a picture of the pileated or whatever. I feel like our thoughts about if it exists are like declining over time. But I hope it's out there too.
I hope so. I really do. I really hope it's out there. That would be so awesome. But unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be, but hard to say, it'd be great if it was.
Favorite story about photographing a bird?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I don't know. I there's just so many adventures and so many different things, and I mean, because a lot of people want to know what's the most death-defying, type of thing, and all that, and I don't know. I try never to be, in danger ever, and never try to, endanger the animal ever, and that type of thing. So that's really a tough one. I don't know. There's a lot of cool things out there, and there's an awful lot more that I still want to do, and got scheduled coming up. And
in that same vein, is there like I guess we'll open it up to animals. Is there a dream animal that you are looking forward to photograph someday besides the chipmunk?
I'd love to go down for the jaguar in Brazil, in the Pantanal. That would be awesome. I'd love to go down to Patagonia for the, they call it a puma down there, but it's all the, mountain lion or cougar or whatever. It's all the same animal, with different names for the same animal. I'd love to do that too. There's, there's so many. A bucket list trip for me would be to go to Antarctica. I've not been there. So that is one of the bad things, is that doing this for a living, the photos I take are really concentrated for my newspaper column and for my books. And so therefore I concentrate mainly on North America. So I've not done anything in Europe or Asia or Africa or anything like that. Would love to, but because I'm making a living at it, I my trips have got to count for, working towards a goal. And so therefore, and since my publisher doesn't have anything to do with Africa or Europe or something like that, so I stick to North America and do all the things here. Which
that's an interesting point. I don't think a lot of people would think about.
Yeah, because when I go out, I'm going out usually to work, and I'm usually going out there to do something specific, and so therefore, it'd be great to do some leisure travel photography, but I don't know what that looks like.
I feel like you'd take like one picture in Europe and you'd be like, I need to make a field guide about this.
Yeah, it'd be a tough one. Yeah, I like to. I want to write what I know, and so I would find that very frustrating trying to write about things I didn't know. That I didn't understand and have an understanding of. That would be very difficult, I think, to do that. But I don't.
And one more final thing for me: where can people go to learn more about the work you're doing and purchase some field guides and be involved with all that?
Yeah, website is naturesmart.com, and I have a bookstore tab, and you can go to that, and it will list them by like the newest, the latest, different field guides, whatever. And then it gives you a choice of ordering through Amazon or ordering through my publisher. And then they take care of it from there.
Do you have a preference which people order through?
No.
Okay. It's the same.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great thing, excuse me, about having a publisher, is that I concentrate on the photos and writing. And I literally, what I'll do is I'll take all the photos. In fact, I got an email today that says we're going to be doing a new owl book, and they said send us all your latest and greatest owl images. And so that's what I do. I process all these images, ship it off to them, and then write the book, ship it off to them. I'm done. Next thing I know, 6 months later, I got a book, that they go, hey, what do you think of this? And I get to edit it, and I get to look at it and say, oh, this works or that doesn't work, and things like that. And then we go from there. So that's kind of a nice thing, because a lot of people think when you're doing this that like I'm laying out the book and designing it. I'm not a graphic designer. I'm a biologist, so I don't do any of that stuff. And so I let the publisher do all that. I do remember a fun time when I first came out with the first really true field guide that I did was the Birds of Minnesota. And I had promised my publisher I would do a Birds of Minnesota and then follow that up with a Wildflowers of Minnesota. And so I remember turning in all the Birds of Minnesota stuff and then moving on to the wildflowers. And I was out photographing because, you have to wait for the right season for wildflowers. You just can't go out and, do them like with birds. You can pretty much get them, as long as they're around. Well, wildflowers, they're only blooming for a short period of time. And I remember getting a phone call from a publisher saying, hey, are you watching the sales on the Birds of Minnesota? And I was like, well, no, I'm out, working on the books here. And they said, wow, it's really going well. Do you think this would work for Wisconsin? And I went, sure, okay. And they said, well, go ahead and do that. So I finished up the wildflower book and I started in on the Birds of Wisconsin. And then kind of went on doing other books. And then I remember the publisher calling me and saying, hey, are you watching the sales on Birds of Wisconsin? I remember, no, I'm just, doing my thing here, writing these other books and taking the pictures and whatnot. Do you think this might work for Michigan? And I said, well, let's give it a try. And honest to God, it was like the 5th state or 6th state when we finally went, hey, wait a minute, we're onto something here. It was like, you talk about being slow, it's like, and then I remember getting the phone call from the publisher saying, oh my gosh, I mean, we're onto something. People like these books, go as fast as you can, just go and don't stop. And that started the whole kind of, going to do all these field guides for all the different states.
Do you have one for every state?
All except for Hawaii and Nevada.
Why Nevada?
There's less than 500,000 people in the entire state. And so there's not a market.
Interesting. That's
now Wyoming also has, Wyoming. That's the thing. Another thing that it's not about me. It's not about, all that stuff. The publisher looks at sales. I mean, they're trying to make a living, right? And if you can't sell the book, then why do it? Now, Wyoming also has about 500,000 people. It's about a similar size or similar populated state, but it has two different things. And one is Yellowstone, the other one is Tetons. And so therefore we did the Wyoming book also. So there's a lot of like sales strategy that goes into these things, which is all important when you're doing it as a business. And that's what the publisher's doing. They're, it's a business. It's not, they're not trying to glorify me or anything like that. They're trying to, put food on the table. And so we're all working together to kind of make this happen. And that's what it kind of boils down to, is that, the economics of it, the business side of it. And that's very, very important. I mean, it would be great if it was all rainbows and unicorns, but it's not. It's, it's business and doing the thing to make a living. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's really cool to talk to someone who's made it work in that sense. That that you are succeeding in the business side and the enjoying and loving your job side too.
Yeah. They say that less than 1% of all authors can make a living on their books. So wow. I've kind of beat the odds a little bit there.
Well, very cool. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us, Stan. We really enjoyed speaking with you about all things nature, and we look forward to the upcoming field guides.
Yeah, I'm busy working on them as we speak.
Stan has truly been living out his dream as a naturalist, and by all accounts loves what he does. It seems he won't be slowing down anytime soon either, which is a good thing, since it means more people will be able to learn about nature through his guides. We enjoyed hearing about Stan's journey, and we're happy to finally meet the man who created one of the first bird books we ever owned. If you're interested in checking out Stan's work, you can visit his website by clicking the link in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Badgerland Birding.